Once upon a time there was a princess. She was craving Christmas cookies, German Zimtsterne to be precise. But because nobody in her kingdom knew how to make them properly and how to make them healthier, she took it upon her to create a new recipe. Yes, today we're making Christmas cookies, German Zimtsterne, and I'm going to show you the traditional way of how to make them, then how to make them paleo or clean eating, and then how to make them vegan. So let's get started. Now, before we dive into the recipe itself, let's take a look at the ingredients. The traditional Zimtsterne are made with powdered sugar. There are generally two kinds. The inexpensive powdered sugar, which is made of refined cane sugar and cornstarch. And most organic brands are made of refined cane sugar and tapioca starch. You can also simply make your own powdered sugar without starch additives by putting refined cane sugar into a blender. You can also use maple sugar or coconut sugar, or date sugar of course, and add to your blender to make a powdered sugar out of those sugars which are less processed than white sugar. My recipe calls for 200 grams of powdered sugar, so add 200 grams, which are 1 1/4 cups maple sugar or coconut sugar, to your high-speed blender and blend on high for about 1 minute. Then let it settle in the blender for a couple of minutes before you open it. This is what powdered maple sugar looks like. It's the lightest natural sugar there is, so I like using it in recipes where the white color of powdered sugar is relevant. This is what powdered coconut sugar looks like. It's much darker and obviously makes the end product darker, but it's delicious nonetheless. Here is a side-by-side comparison of cane sugar, maple sugar and coconut sugar made into powdered sugar. If the cane sugar had been made in the blender, the consistency would be more like the other two. The store-bought one is a bit clumpy. Now let's move on to the flours. The traditional recipe is made with almond meal and or hazelnut meal. I couldn't find almond meal today, so I'm using blanched almond flour and hazelnut meal. Both of these nut flours are fairly expensive in North America, so if you want to save a lot of money, I recommend making your own. It's very easy, and I will link a great video here from a friend who guides you through the whole process in detail. Now, lastly, the third important ingredient, egg whites. Make sure your eggs are at room temperature before you start preparing the dough. For the vegan cookies we can obviously not use egg, but there is a fantastic alternative that whips to stiff peaks just like egg whites. Aquafaba. That's the liquid in cans of chickpeas. Make sure you look for canned chickpeas that have no added salt, because you want your aquafaba to not taste salty, of course. All you have to do is drain the chickpeas over a bowl and then use 90 grams, which is 3 cups and 1 tablespoon of aquafaba as replacement for 3 egg whites. To separate the eggs, simply crack them open and move the egg yolk from one shell half to the other. Make sure not even a tiny bit of egg yolk ends in your egg whites, or else they won't whip. The 3 egg whites should amount to at least 90 grams, which is 1/3 cup plus 1 tablespoon. I'm using large eggs but not jumbo. Then pull out your stand mixer or a large bowl and hand mixer, and take a clean kitchen towel to wipe the inside and the whisk, as even the tiniest bit of oil or dirt can make it impossible for your egg whites to reach stiff peaks. Once your utensils are 100% oil and dirt free, it's time to start the Christmas cookie baking process. Let's start with the recipe for traditional Zimtsterne. Add 3 egg whites and a pinch of salt to the bowl of your stand mixer and turn it to medium-high and whisk for about 5 minutes or until stiff peaks form. You should be able to wiggle the whisk around without the peak changing shape. Then remove the bowl from the mixer and get a large sieve and sift the powdered sugar into the stiff egg whites little by little, using a hand whisk to fold in the sugar. I added the sugar in 3 parts, whisking in between. You want to reach a glossy, gooey consistency in the end like this. You should be able to form ribbons with it. Now, get a sealable jar and measure out about 1/3 of a cup of this egg white sugar mix and set it aside in a jar. Place it in the refrigerator. Then it's time to add first a teaspoon of cinnamon and then the nut meal or nut flours. I'm using a mix of almond flour and hazelnut meal. Add that to the remaining egg white sugar mix in 3 parts, folding it in carefully so you don't overmix. It's important to use large strokes to fold it in and not mix vigorously. Once you worked in the 3 parts of the nut flour, stop mixing as soon as it's well incorporated. The dough will be somewhat sticky, but it should be easy to form a ball. Now add the dough to a sealable container or wrap it in cling film and place it in the fridge for at least an hour. Once the dough is chilled, it should be easy to roll it out. I like putting it in between 2 pieces of parchment paper so it doesn't stick to the rolling pin. Roll it out to 1/4 inch, 0.6 to 0.7 centimeters. If you roll it thinner, the dough may burn from the bottom, and if you roll it thicker, the frosting will burn from the top before the cookies are baked. Then take a star cookie cutter and dunk it into some powdered sugar every time you cut out the star from the dough. You may have to use your fingers to push the cookie out of the cutter. If your dough is very sticky, like it is with the paleo dough, then you can also dunk your cutter into some water and that should do the trick. Then place the stars on a heavy-duty parchment paper lined baking sheet. And now it's time to brush on the egg white frosting we put aside earlier. I recommend using a silicone brush and add a dollop to the center and then work your way outwards to the tips of the star. Once you've finished brushing all the stars with a thin layer of frosting, place them in the 325°F preheated oven for 8 minutes. Keep a close eye on them so the frosting doesn't burn. Take the cookies out of the oven and carefully place them on a wire rack so they can cool completely. On the first day they are soft, on the second they are a little harder, and each day they become crispier and crispier. For the paleo version of the Zimtsterne, all we do really is make stiff egg whites just like for the traditional recipe, and then we add the maple powdered sugar we prepared before. 90 grams egg whites to 200 grams powdered sugar. Use a large sieve and sift the sugar in 2 to 3 parts into the egg whites sugar mix and use a hand whisk to fold it in. Once you mixed in all the sugar, the consistency should look like this, glossy and gooey, and you should be able to form ribbons with it. This one looks even better than the traditional one made with cane sugar because the maple sugar is a lot finer. Now get a sealable jar and measure about 1/3 of a cup of the egg white sugar mix into it, seal it and place it in the refrigerator. Then, just like with the traditional Zimtsterne, add a teaspoon of cinnamon to the remaining egg white sugar mix and then work in the nut flours in 3 parts and fold in carefully until you reach a sticky dough with which you can form a ball. Place it in a sealable container or wrap it in cling film and refrigerate the dough for at least 1 hour. Then roll the dough out in between 2 pieces of parchment paper so it doesn't stick to the rolling pin, again 1/4 inch thick. Then start cutting out your cookies with a star cookie cutter. Place the cutout cookies on a heavy-duty parchment paper lined baking sheet and brush the maple sugar egg frosting we set aside earlier on top by adding a dollop to the center and then brushing outwards to the tips of the star. Bake in a 325°F preheated oven for 8 minutes, then remove from the oven and carefully place the individual cookies on a wire rack to cool completely. The frosting is a tiny bit darker than the one made with cane sugar, but the consistency of the cookie itself is exactly the same. I'm so happy with the result of these, and they have the added bonus of having this delicious maple flavor that goes so well with almonds and hazelnuts. Lastly, let's make the vegan version of the Zimtsterne. For that, we will use the aquafaba we measured out earlier. Add the aquafaba to the clean bowl of your stand mixer together with half a teaspoon of cream of tartar and set the mixer to medium-high and whisk for at least 6 to 8 minutes. Aquafaba takes longer to form stiff peaks than egg whites, but you'll get there eventually. Don't give up. Once you reach stiff peaks, you should be able to wiggle the whisk without the peak losing its shape. Now we'll add the coconut powdered sugar simply because we made it, but any of the 3 powdered sugars I showed at the beginning will work, of course, they are all vegan. Add it to a large sieve and sift in 2 to 3 batches while folding it in between each add. At the end it should have a glossy and gooey consistency like this, and you should be able to form ribbons. Now, just like with the other 2, get a sealable jar and measure out about 1/3 of a cup of the egg white sugar mixture and put it in the jar and then refrigerate. Now, add a teaspoon of cinnamon and work in your nut flour in 3 parts, folding carefully in order not to overmix. As soon as a sticky dough forms into a ball, remove it from the bowl and add it to a sealable container or wrap it in cling film and refrigerate for at least 1 hour. Then take it out of the fridge and place it in between 2 pieces of parchment paper to roll out into a 1/4 inch large oval, and then start pressing out your cookies with the star cookie cutter. Place the cookies on a heavy-duty parchment paper lined baking sheet and then brush the coconut sugar egg frosting on them with a silicone brush by adding a dollop to the center and working your way out to the tips of the star. Now bake the cookies in a 325 degrees Fahrenheit preheated oven for 8 minutes, then remove from the oven and carefully place on a wire rack for them to cool. These are the darkest of the 3, but only because we used the coconut powdered sugar. If you use maple or cane powdered sugar, they would look exactly like the others. And now look at the consistency of this one. Isn't it amazing how the aquafaba worked exactly like the egg white? It's unbelievable. Here are all 3 of them in comparison. The traditional, the paleo, and the vegan one. Now off to eat all the cookies, all the Zimtsterne, all the cinnamon stars. I have to say that the paleo ones are my favorite, but the ones that I'm most impressed are the vegan ones. I mean, I've never baked with aquafaba before trying these cookies, so I'm seriously intrigued at how amazing they turned out. You cannot taste the chickpea, you cannot taste the aquafaba at all, so I'm excited to hear what you think about them. I hope you're gonna give these cookies a try. If you do, please don't forget to snap a picture. I love seeing when you make any of my recipes. Oh, and wait, before you leave, subscribe to my channel and check out this video.